between us. This is where the journey starts. There is hope in the stillness. There is solace in our friends and in the love that grows between us. This is where the isolation ends. Come full circle in a moment. Hold no shame in what you feel. This old world will keep on turning, and our broken hearts will heal. When the rain falls around you like your solitary tear, in the love that flows between us, know that thunder holds no fear. In the struggle you hold sacred, when the arrows pierce you through, in the love that flows between us, may your courage be renewed. There is music in each silence. There is promise in each day, and in the love that holds between us, may we always find our way. Come full circle in a moment. Hold no shame in what you feel. This old world will keep on turning, and our broken hearts will heal. There's a flame in the darkness, burning deep within our hearts, and in the love that grows between us. This is where the journey starts. There is hope in the stillness. There is solace in our friends and in the love that flows between us. The sacred journey never ends. Yes, in the love that holds between us, sacred journey.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Sunday morning, and put your hands up and say thanks to Joe Jenks for being with us today, virtually. It's not that far away, but you know, in this kind of life and across the border, it's far enough. For this morning, I'm delighted to welcome you to our service today. My name is Reverend Victoria Ingram, and it is my pleasure to serve this congregation. I want to start by thanking all of you who were a part of last night's celebration. Thank you again. It was a wonderful party and a great fiesta and festive time. So thanks again, and I look forward to seeing you as we drive through today and have a chance to wave at each other and see each other in person. If you are joining us this morning for the first time, you are welcome here. We are delighted to have everyone show up at this time and spend time in community. This morning, we have our special guest, Joe Jenks. Many of you are familiar with Joe. He has been with our congregation in the past. His music inspires and draws us in. His warm smile makes us happy, and this will be a very special service this morning as he is theming his words and his music around one friendship at a time. The goal of this congregation is to nurture one another, to serve the community, and to inspire action that heals the world. And in that, we invite you in. We are mindful that we are not the first people who have used this building. We are not the first people who have used this land, and we are not the first people who came to the Hamilton area to create the city that we live in. We owe a debt of gratitude to those who came before us. And Hamilton was a meeting place, and it was a busy place with many peoples, but it is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee people. Especially in the last couple of weeks, hearing about the findings at Kamloops Residential School, we are reminded again of the history and the horrors that have happened in Canada's relationship with its Indigenous populations. And those findings call all of us again to remind us of the dignity and worth of every person that we value in our principles, and to speak out, to advocate for making sure that they are honored and respected and brought back to their families so they can be at rest. I light the chalice this morning with these words from Reverend Eric Walker Wickstrom. Here today, together in this place with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we feel so that we may know, and may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice we light our way. And say with me now, our unison chalice lighting words, please. May this flame be our light of friendship and love. Again, welcome this morning to Joe Jenks. Joe, I'm turning it over to you and looking forward to hearing your message for us and your songs. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much. It is absolutely my pleasure to be with all of you this morning. And I have many fond memories of being with you in your physical sanctuary, so it's a pleasure to be here with you and have some sense in my mind of the virtual space that we hold in our consciousness as we gather. I'm going to start out with a song written by a friend and colleague and mentor of mine, Holly Neer, and it's been a real gift to me during the pandemic. It's called I Am Willing. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. What seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family. There is sorrow in my town. There is panic in the nation. There is wailing the whole world round. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. What seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly. May the elders be more wise. May the winds of change caress us, even though it hurts our eyes. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. What seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my fears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my tears. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. What seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. I am open and I am willing to be hopeless. What seems so strange, it dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. It dishonors those who go before us. So lift me up to the light of change. Thank you. It is always my pleasure, and what an immense gift, to share in worship and community with Unitarians across this continent and beyond. I join you today from DeKalb, Illinois, historically the home of the Ottawa and the Potawatomi peoples, among others. And it is truly a privilege to be here with you this morning. I always like to give a caveat at the beginning of a service when I'm speaking. That one of the great joys for me as a musician is that I hold no particular authority of any kind. I'm here with you as a peer and one person with an instrument and some opinions. As Woody Guthrie said, 3 chords and the truth. And the fact of the matter is I use more than 3 chords, and I sometimes stretch the truth a little for the sake of a good parable. So I'm not even sure that I'm working with 3 chords and the truth, but it's just important for me to meet with you as a peer, to meet with you not as a person who has a PhD in anything, not as a person who is formally ordained by any denomination, but as someone who recognizes that the gift of ministry and therefore the responsibility of ministry is one that belongs to all of us because we minister to each other. And so I hope that you find something in today's service that moves you or speaks to you or uplifts you or causes you contemplation or maybe inspires you to go do a little more research. But as is said in many meetings, the opinions expressed here are those of the person who expressed them and not those of the organization. So with our underwriting caveat out of the way, I want to talk to you about one of my best friends. His name was Cleveland Robinson. And I knew Cleveland from the time I was born. He was my oldest brother's best friend. My oldest brother was 17 years older than me, Jerry. And He sadly passed away in 2003 at age 47. But his best friend, Cleveland Robinson, was my best friend as a little kid, as a baby, as a toddler. He was black and he was gay. And he was at times challenged to find a place within his own home and within his own culture. And as we celebrate Pride Month, I have been thinking a lot about Cleveland this year, more so than some years, because I recognize that my life was changed for the better as a result of having him in my life for the duration of time that he was. He died in December of 1993 of AIDS. And for the years that he was in my life, for the 21 years that he was a part of my life, I was immensely blessed. He normalized for me, for lack of a better word, being around people of color. I grew up in a mixed-race neighborhood, but not everybody had a best friend who was 16 years older than them and black. But he was my person. He was my go-to person. My mom was very, very busy, and Cleveland frequently liked to skip school, and he'd come over to our house. And my mom would say, well, that's fine. I'm not going to call the truancy officer. But here's the deal. Nobody sits around this house watching TV during the day. So you have your choice. You can help out with laundry. You can help with cleaning. You can help with cooking. You can help with yard work, or you can help with the little one. Take your pick. And, every time he chose me. And so I grew up with this person present in my life, and also on weekends and evenings. And he was just a part of the fabric of my existence. But the gifts that he gave to me still unfold and reveal themselves. Cleveland helped me get very comfortable with people who were gay. He prepared me for having many friends and people I'm close to come out of the closet. Without any particular intent to do so. Again, he made it part of the normal spectrum of human behavior and activity and ideas and identity, and therefore it was not surprising to me when I saw more expressions of those ideas. He also would sing to me, and he would sing to me in a way that embodied a certain rhythm, a certain groove, a certain soulfulness that I grew up believing was simply what music was supposed to be. It didn't occur to me that other babies were getting different songs and different sounds. And yet he laid the foundation of those ideas within me. And when he was in his last months, he said, I want you to sing a particular song at my funeral. And I know that many people in your family sing, but I want you to sing it in particular because you're the only one that sings it right. And it took me years to understand why that was. And it was because he had been singing it to me the way he sang it for so much of my developmental time, that by the time we got around 20 years later to him preparing for his own departure from this planet, I had learned the song his way. So in his eyes, I sang it right. But I also came to understand that rhythm is connected to culture. Rhythm is connected to the people we come from and the music that we grow up hearing. And he introduced me to music that I would not otherwise have heard. There was a family gathering in 2001, in 1991, just at the beginning of January of 1991. And we did pictures, and we all knew that Cleveland had AIDS and that he was at some point going to die. And yet we spent time together, as you do. We hung out and we had holidays, and he was part of it, and he was part of our family pictures. And I had this deep sense of foreboding that gathering of people would never all be together again. And I just assumed that it was Cleveland who would be missing from the picture, quite literally. And it was not. On June 1st of that year, 1991, my father passed away very suddenly from a heart attack. And Cleveland was there to counsel me through that. He was there to be a friend to me through all of that. And I bring this up because I think attitudes and ideas change one friendship at a time. We can have some pretty abstract conversations about how to foster diversity in our communities. But the reality is, one Unitarian minister that I respect immensely said, when people tell me it's my job as a minister to help foster diversity in the congregation, I ask them, how diverse is their dinner table on a weekly basis? And if the answer is not at all, then I ask them to go make friends, honest friends in the community, so that they may enjoy the richness of multicultural, multidimensional friendships, rather than trying to reverse engineer diversity within the congregation. Become friends with people who are different than you are, and then invite them into your community and see if they like it. But that happens one friendship at a time. Attitudes about race and gender and identity and sex, these attitudes change one friendship at a time. Attitudes about privilege change one friendship at a time. It's good to talk about isms. It's good to talk about the academic understanding of systems of oppression. But the way that we make change is one friendship at a time, one person at a time, one attitude at a time. And if we really want to become friends with people who think differently than we do, or whose life experience is different than our own, we of course have to learn to suspend our own judgment. We have to learn to suspend our knee-jerk reaction, to be aware of the differences in a way that puts distance between us, rather than being aware of our differences as a point of curiosity. Case in point, I recently spent some time listening to a friend who is very anti-COVID vaccination. And it's somebody I've known for a long time, and yet in this way we are very, very different. And I had to decide, is making a point or being a friend the greater part of this conversation? Is trying to make my point more relevant, or is trying to understand their point of view more relevant? And I decided that trying to understand their point of view was really the better part of valor in the moment. And yet it was a challenge because it was against my own perspective. Nonetheless, I thought about Cleveland. I thought about all the things that he helped me understand and connect with, not in a judgy way, not in a preachy way, not telling me what I should or shouldn't be, or should or shouldn't do, or should or shouldn't believe, but just by being himself and by being a loving and compassionate person. He invited me into a circle that made normal for me a much greater spectrum of diversity than most of the kids in my neighborhood grew up with. And for that, I will always be grateful. And I want to sing for you the song that I sang at his funeral, the one that he sang to me when I was a toddler. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Sing it from home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. If I get there before you do, coming for to carry me home, I'll make a hole and pull you through, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. One more time. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home, coming for to carry me home. The lessons I learned from Cleveland, as I said, are still lessons that I continue to learn from. They still play out in my life. The joy for me, I guess, in a weird sort of way, as I've gotten older, is recognizing that our relationships with other people don't end when their corporeal time on this planet ends. That if we've been paying attention, we continue to learn from them. We continue to learn from their wisdom even after they're gone. I was 19 when my dad died, as I mentioned, in 1991. 5 years later, when I was 24, my mom passed. And every year in between, I lost someone close, including Cleveland. And that time, I think, prepared me a little bit for what we've all been walking through in these last 16 months. It helped me begin to understand that sometimes there aren't enough hours in the day to relate to each loss as an individual experience all the time. There is a certain amount of living that is yet to be done. My mother always used to say the living always take precedent over the dead. And it seemed a little morbid to me when I was younger, but in a time like the pandemic, when we've experienced so much loss, for me personally, now 39 colleagues, friends, family members, people with whom I have recorded and toured, people in whose homes I have stayed, people who have traveled with me to Ireland, people that have hosted concerts for me, ministers, DJs, all kinds of folks that I have been blessed to know in 22 years on the road. 39 people are no longer on this planet who were here 16 months ago, the majority of whom died from COVID-19. In the face of that kind of grief, it's hard to know how to stay focused on other things. I find my consciousness a little fractured and my thoughts a little diffuse as I try and remain aware of this thing that my mother said to me so many years ago. The living always take precedent over the dead. And I've come to recognize that just as I can learn from those who are gone, that I can in fact grieve many losses all at once. I make room for the sadness. I remember each person individually, and when I do, I think of things I'm grateful for, and I notice the sadness. But for me, the process of turning grief into gratitude, recognizing why I am feeling a pang of sadness or frustration or anger, usually comes from something I'm missing. It comes from having loved someone and having been loved by someone in some particular way, and knowing that I will not experience that again from that person. But if I can recognize in those moments when my sadness is most poignant, that in fact it's a manifestation of my gratitude. It's a manifestation of the joy that I experienced in knowing that person. That's useful. That's helpful for me. I have another friend who's taught me a great deal. I met him first in 2001 at a gathering called the Great Labor Arts Exchange in Washington, D.C. And I have to tell you that when I first met him, I thought he was the most naturally joyous human being I had ever encountered in my life. It was not until many, many years later that I found out that he had recently become engaged, a second marriage for him, and he was over the moon. And in between the first time I met him and the second time I met him, he got married, and he was even more joyous the second time I met him. And it was only years later that I correlated my experience of his joyousness with this immense goodness that was moving through his life. And my friend Charlie Bernhardt was a cantor for 36 years. He's cantor emeritus now at Oseh Shalom Synagogue in Laurel, Maryland, Reconstructionist community that have welcomed me many times. First program they hosted called Labor on the Bima, a community very concerned with social justice. But when Charlie and I met the second time, and I started to learn more about his life and learned that he was a full-time organizer for the Government Employees Union, a full-time labor organizer and contract negotiator, and he was also a full-time cantor at his synagogue. I thought about it for a minute because I had never met somebody who was, in essence, a political activist, an organizer, a trade unionist, who was also a religious leader and a spiritual leader. And I found this very intriguing. And then I thought about it a little further, and I said, well, you know, Charlie, there really is precedent in your tradition for this. And he said, oh, how's that? I said, well, one could make a case that Moses arguably led the greatest labor walkout in history. And so it makes sense to me somehow that you, of course, would be a labor leader and a spiritual leader in one. There's deep history here. And we had a good laugh. And it was the beginning of a friendship that has spanned 2 decades now. And one of the reasons why I bring this up is that Charlie and I have come to love each other as brothers. We have come to love each other as people we know have good hearts and good intentions. And it's particularly helpful because it allows, within the fabric of that friendship, it allows for me to make mistakes. It allows for me to be wrong sometimes and to receive information not as a reprimand, but simply as information. There are any number of ways in which I was not entirely aware, I probably still am not, of the many manifestations of anti-Semitism that exist in the world. But because Charlie and I were friends first, and we began a cultural and a theological dialogue and a political dialogue, I can ask Charlie questions that I might not ask very many people, Because if for some reason even the very nature of my question betrays my own ignorance, my own lack of understanding, perhaps some latent anti-Semitism that I am not aware of within myself, but to which I was indoctrinated as a young person, that Charlie will lovingly understand my heart, and he will offer in return information rather than judgment. And as a result of that, I have proactively had the opportunity to educate myself on a great deal of Jewish culture and community and ideas, albeit from a fairly progressive community, but nonetheless, it's been incredibly valuable to me as a seeker, as a spiritual seeker, as one who moves through the world, lifting the wonder and the wisdom of many traditions that I encounter. And it's been useful for me as an ally to understand other people's experience of systems of oppression. So as we consider how to make change, again I say, one friendship at a time. It brings us around to a place where we have personal understanding, and that personal understanding fosters compassion. When we see something in the world that is unjust, the more personal awareness we have of who is affected by that injustice, the more likely we are to let our compassion, or at times our anger, be the spark plug that spurs the engine moving forward so that we take action in some way. But anger cannot be the fuel for the engine. It's only the spark. The fuel in that engine must be love. The fuel in the engine must be compassion. Otherwise, we are less likely to actually have a positive effect on the thing that we seek to change. But we come back to these friendships that make normal, that make comfortable the traditions of other people. And we find in that the seeds of what we need to know to move into the world more effectively as an ally. I was blessed as a young person that my parents wanted to raise global citizens. They couldn't afford to take us all over the world. They couldn't afford to travel with us, 7 children on my father's salary. And so they decided to host foreign exchange students. They decided to bring the world to us so that we would experience the world through the lens of other young people or young adults who were pursuing education, for whom education mattered enough that they were willing to make extraordinary sacrifices in order to get to the United States to go to school. And they would share with us music and art and food from their home countries. And I have to tell you, nothing speaks of a culture more immediately than music and food. When you have eaten what other people consider delicious, you come to some understanding of those people. So what a gift. What a gift as a young person to be immersed in this little mini United Nations that waltzed through my parents' house. Students from Iraq and Iran, students from Spain, from other parts of Europe, students from North Africa, from Morocco, from Japan. I remember many of them with fondness, but in particular, several students from India. And again, this idea of making something feel normal that to some people would feel different or other. But my parents went out of their way to make sure that we knew that we were part of a big world, and we were only a small part of it. My father was extraordinarily proud to serve as an enlisted man in a U.S. military that was integrated, the first unit that he was aware of that was fully integrated racially. And he spoke of it, if he spoke of his time in the Army and during the Korean War, that was largely what he spoke of how proud he was of the changes that had happened in between World War II and the Korean War, and that he served in an integrated unit, and he had zero tolerance for racism. My father was unlikely to raise his voice at almost any occasion, but he would throw down with somebody who uttered racial epithets. And I more than once saw him invite someone fairly firmly to not speak in such a fashion in his home. He thus made normal for me as a young person the idea that not only do we have a right, but an opportunity and an obligation to stand up to injustice when we see it, even if in its most sort of incremental forms. We can compassionately but firmly stand against injustice. And Charlie and I, interestingly enough, we've written some songs together. Charlie Bernhardt, rather, back to the cantor. We've written some songs together, but the first one was called Tzedek Tirdof, and it was a phrase that comes out of the teachings of Rabbi Hillel a little over 2,000 years ago, and it means justice shall you seek, Tzedek Tirdof. And Hillel was asked, if he was such a smart guy, if he could preach the whole Torah while standing on one leg. And Hillel said, sure, love the Lord your God above all else, and love your neighbor as yourself. The rest is commentary. Many of you who were raised Christian will know that this story appears in the Gospels ascribed to Jesus. But in fact, Hillel was on this a little before Jesus, and in my mind it squarely places Jesus in the rabbinical tradition, standing on the shoulders of Hillel, standing on the shoulders of wisdom thinkers of the Talmudic traditions. And out of that, this next song emerged. It's called Tikkun Olam, heal the world. Tikkun Olam b'kesh shalom, heal the world, work for peace. And this is a song that I wrote because Charlie just sent me those two words, Tikkun Olam. And then he said, look it up. And it turned into this song. Those of you watching live on Facebook or after the fact, or on YouTube rather, this is how you know this was live, because nobody would have pre-recorded this. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, b'kesh shalom. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, b'kesh shalom. Tale is told of how the world was made in 7 days, 6 of them for work, 1 to rest and pray. Then God placed the holy light into a vessel made of clay, but it was fractured by our sin, and the pieces fell away. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, b'kesh shalom. Why was God so careless as to lose this sacred light? Now we must gather up the shards to set creation right. It's a task we may not finish, but we each must lend our hands as we love through imperfection and we heal our broken lands. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, b'kesh shalom. So we we tend the garden, picking stones and pulling weeds. We water with compassion the fragile sacred seed. We are partners in creation, and we let God's true light shine, when by faith and solidarity we show our love divine. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Bakeshalo. Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Tikkun Olam, Bakeshalo. Sometimes we don't have to travel around the world to find strong differences of opinion. Sometimes they're right down the street. Sometimes they're in our own communities. And I was approached at a festival about 10 years ago and asked if I would consider doing songwriting with military veterans. And I told the woman, absolutely, I'm happy to try anything once. You know, music is ostensibly a universal language, but the question is, are military veterans willing to write a song with me? You know, this long-haired hippie leftist folk singer, you know, like, am I going to be welcome in that community or just seen as an outsider, a do-gooder? And she said, I think you'll be fine. So I was invited to Spokane, where I was on retreat with veterans, and we did indeed work on writing a song together. This is called One Piece at a Time, and it bridged a lot of gaps for a lot of people. Again, with the tuning, sorry everybody. It's a very humid time here, and those of you who know acoustic instruments know that humidity has an impact. While I'm tuning, I will mention, because it's hard for me to leap over the keyboard to get over the microphones to the keyboard while I'm playing, but I'll mention if you want to know more about my music, there's a website you can go to, and there's an essay up on my homepage I'd love to share with you all called For the Love of Lilacs. And that's joejenks.com, joejencks.com. Hoping for a new start, try to find my way. A little bit of rebellion mixed with adventure far away. A family tradition to honor and to serve. A call of duty, now I'm down to my last nerve. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once, but I've given up my life one piece at a time. I had a job, I did it well, tried to trust the chain of command. What in the world was I thinking? Now I walk among the damned. Living on the edge of life and death, you know it takes its toll. The loss of innocence, no stability, no control. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once, but I'm giving up my life one piece at a time. Well, I second guess my choices, woulda, coulda, shoulda all the time. But on sleepless nights that doesn't help to find a reason or a rhyme. Picking up the pieces, honoring the dead. Not much here I understand, and there's a war inside my head. But I am not expendable, I'm still living with the pain. Though there are ways that I survived, I'm still dying every day. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Some folks gave their lives all at once, but I've given up my life one piece at a time, believing that the future holds more power than the past. I reach with forgiveness for a new life I hope will last. So put a candle in the window, help me see I'm not alone. Though I have changed, I need to know I'm finally welcome home. Does anybody see me? Does anybody know what I've been through? Step by step and day by day I find, well, I'm taking back my life. Yes, I'm taking back my life. I'm taking back my life one piece at a time. One piece at a time. There's a poem by Hafez called Tripping Over Joy. It speaks to me quite frequently every time I read it in different ways. But it's this: what is the difference between your experience of existence and that of a saint? The saint knows that the spiritual path is a sublime chess game with God, and that the beloved has just made such a fantastic move that the saint is now continually tripping over joy and bursting out in laughter and saying, "I surrender." Whereas, my dear, I am afraid you still think you have 1,000 serious moves. There are so many things to which we must surrender in this life. But there are many things that we don't have to surrender to. We can be proactive. I was just out west for 3 weeks, and on my way back, my last night out south of Bismarck, North Dakota, I met a fellow camper, a woman who was half American and half Egyptian. And we began a conversation, and my knowledge of Rumi and Hafez opened a door that began what I'm sure will be the next dialogue in my life, the next one friendship at a time, that begins to help me understand the world, that begins to allow someone else to understand the world differently. We did not talk about some of the bigger global conflicts. We were just having our first conversation, and sometimes those things should be reserved until some trust has been established. But I have no doubt that over the arc of the years to come that we will keep in touch, that we will have opportunity to dialogue about the many, many complex and nuanced facets of systems of oppression and the way that they play out for different peoples in different places. And I will make sure that the foundation for that conversation is one of friendship, because that's the only way I know to learn and grow and make honest change, is one friendship at a time. I'm going to wrap up this section of the service with a song by my dear and departed friend John Fromer. It's called Gonna Take Us All. We need the Buddhists and the Baptists, Quakers and Catholics too, the atheists and agnostics, Muslims and Jews. We need people of all nations, all colors and all creeds, to put an end to war now, to put an end to greed. Gonna take us all to make a change, take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets, gonna take us all, gonna take us all. Need the immigrants and the unions, the Greens and the gays, the hip-hoppers and the beboppers and the women for equal pay, the farm workers out in the sun, homeless out in the rain, the seniors and the soccer moms to build a world that is humane. Gonna take us all to make a change, take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets, gonna take us all, gonna take us all. We need your friends and your neighbors, the poets and the painters, the socialists and the anarchists, the pacifists and the humanists. Every culture and community takes black and white and brown. At times we won't see eye to eye, but we stand on common ground. Gonna take us all to make a change, take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets, gonna take us all, gonna take us all to make a change, take us all to win the peace. Gonna take us all in the streets, gonna take us all, gonna take us all. Gonna take us all, gonna take us all in the streets to win the peace. Gonna take us all. Thank you so much for letting me join you this morning. And let me just take a moment and congratulate Reverend Victoria on an extraordinary tenure with you in Hamilton. Such a pleasure to be here with you. And be well.
Thank you so much, Joe, for being with us this morning. You can understand and know how wonderful it is to get to go to church. And I appreciate you making that possible for all of us this morning. In just a couple of moments, Joe's going to play our postlude. And before that, however, I want to extinguish our chalice with these words. After this morning's beautiful music and deeply moving words, these from Matt Meyer. May we go forward in purposeful rhythm, that we may give voice to the melody of our imaginations, the music of our souls, and all the possibilities of a just world, as we might together create it. Go in peace. And now Joe will give us our postlude.
Indeed. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. I wrote this at the top of the pandemic, and the 20th of March, 2020. It's a bit of a mantra and an affirmation that I need. So I invite you to sing it with me from wherever you are. I will greet the morning, I will greet the day. I will greet the evening, and love will guide my way. Well, I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. The sun goes down, the sun comes up, the earth goes round, and I fill my cup with the goodness all around me. I know love will guide my way. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. The money comes and the money goes. I count my blessings, count my woes, but the kindness all around me grows. Love will guide my way. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. Through broken hearts and broken bones, by internet or mobile phones, through gentle or impassioned tones, love will guide my way. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. Through times of fear and sadness, through times of joy and gladness, through apocalyptic madness, I know love will guide the way. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. So put your hands up to the rafters, sing and shout with laughter. 'Cause if it's hope you're after, I know love will guide my way. I will greet the morning, and I will greet the day, and I will greet the evening. Love will guide my way. Yes, I will greet the morning, we will greet the day, we will greet the day, we will greet the evening, we will greet the evening. Love will guide our way. Yes, we will greet the evening. Love will guide our way. Through whatever else may happen, I know love will guide the way.